Ladies and gentlemen, we are here on YouTube, Facebook, and it's time. Monday Night Nerd. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad you all could be here today. We are LIVE live on a Monday night, and we are here to talk nerdy stuff, and you are all here to find out my list for my top 10 comic book movies. This is going to be interesting because I bet if anybody knows me, I'm going to have a few oddballs in there, and I'm going to have a few exceptions on there, and it might bug some people, but hey, it's my list. I get to call the shots. It's my show. Hope you all are having a good day. It is a good Monday out. It is not raining for, I think, the first time in about 3 days, which I greatly appreciate. But we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got a little bit of news first, and we got a little sponsor as always, and then we got a top 10 list. So let's jump into the news right now. I watched a TV show this week. I watched Secret Wars by Marvel. Let's talk about Secret Wars. It's a TV show or a digital streaming show that's on Disney Plus, and it was 6 episodes, and they were a half hour apiece. Good night, everybody. I kid. That my thoughts on Secret Wars. It was not what I expected. I don't want to be negative. I really don't want to be negative about this show because I feel like they didn't lie, which is the one thing that I would have really been upset about. If they really pushed that this was going to be a certain show shot in a certain way with a certain feel, and it didn't, I would have been upset. But when I watched the trailer back, I don't feel like they did anything wrong. I feel like a bit of the problem with the show was the fans. And I'm not blaming the fans. I'm just saying, because I'm part of it. I feel like we kind of took... I feel like it kind of took... I took the idea that this was going to be a Winter Soldier show. It was going to be like Captain America Winter Soldier, and it was going to be that espionage, that, you know, who are they? Who are the Skrulls? They could be anybody. And I feel like I may have overhyped the show in my head. Did Marvel do anything to stop me from doing that, though? Not really. So I watched episode 1 and 2, took a break just because I had stuff going on. And then on the weekend, I watched 3, 4, 5, and 6 back to back to back to back. The Nick Fury part I shouldn't say Nick Fury part. Nick Fury as a character had sort of a we didn't know much about him. We didn't know what his backstory was. We didn't know who, like, he always seemed to have the answer to every question. And I feel like this show really pulled the veil back on that, and not in a good way. There's a famous director, and I can never remember who said it, and I cannot find the quote, but I promise you I heard them say it because it stuck with me. The director said, "You have never watched your favorite character and said, 'Wow, I love this person. I really want to know what made him that person.'" And I feel like Secret Wars tried to do that with Fury and dropped the ball big time. For those who don't know, the whole point of the show was it was supposed to introduce more, bring up the Skrulls and show that they can shapeshift and they could be anybody, and that's kind of what the graphic novel was about. And yeah, it was slow. I'll fully admit it was slow. It was very dialogue heavy. With any property that Marvel does, sadly, you can see plot holes from a mile away. My buddy Sean brought up a very funny point. If you've seen the whole series, this isn't spoiling anything. I'm not going to spoil anything, by the way. At the end of episode 5, when Fury has sort of his, what I call his badass moment at the end, he takes off his trench coat and his wool cap and goes into the mausoleum and puts on a trench coat and a wool cap and an eye patch. Why? I don't know. You pretty much changed in the exact same thing you had on before. And yeah, there's definitely some issues with the show. I will say it's probably the weakest. I can say that it progressively, the Marvel series on Disney Plus have gotten worse. And I say that going from like WandaVision, which was like a 9 out of 10, to this is almost like a 6. So it's not like it's a 2. I would give it a 6. I would say watch it if you're a diehard Marvel fan. If you're not, you can skip it. I don't think there's anything in there that happens that you're going to be missing. The other funny part that caught my attention was when basically they think World War III is going to happen because there's nukes involved and blah, 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 blah. And Nick Fury is talking to the head of SIS, which I have no idea what that organization is. I think it's just a made-up organization. And she says, do you want to maybe call one of your Avengers friends? And Nick Fury goes, oh, no, I'll take care of this. And I'm like, World War III is going to happen, possibly. How is your one-eyed butt going to save everybody? Like, wouldn't this be something Thor could just come down and just poof, with a hammer and we're done? Maybe. But whatever. Yeah, overall it was okay. It was better than I thought it was going to be, because from what I read from the reviews before I watched the last episode, I heard it was going to be absolutely terrible. And I'm glad it wasn't, because I would have been really bummed if it was. Will it play a factor in Miss Marvel? I don't know. Seeing as it shows Fury back on Sword in the spaceship, I figured this would be a prequel, but spoilers, he goes back up. That's the only spoiler I'll give. So whether this will be referenced in the Marvels, I don't know. Probably. That's Marvel's thing, is to reference everything that just happened. So yeah, if you're a Marvel fan, big Marvel fan, go watch it. Don't expect it to be a knockout 10 out of 10 show. It's a show. And, with most Marvel properties, I was just saying this in the Instagram live that goes on 15 minutes before their show. I always say with Marvel properties, think of Marvel in their other medium. So you've got Marvel as a comic book. When you go into a comic book shop and you're wanting to buy a Marvel book, if you're a Thor fan or a Captain America fan, you probably don't really mess with Miss Marvel. You probably don't mess with the Guardians. Maybe you do. Think of that the same way you look at the TV shows. You're not going to like everything. And I don't think Marvel expects us to like everything, because they're going after different demographics and different types of people for different shows. I completely understand if Miss Marvel means nothing to you. Or, yeah, Miss Marvel? Yeah, Kamala Khan's show. I liked it because it was a different show with a different twist and a different idea and a different world. I like that, but I could totally understand if you're watching that and going, I don't connect with this at all. It means nothing to me. Perfectly fine. It wasn't made for you. It was made for that demographic or people interested in that demographic or, whatever it is. And I think that's the way we have to look at Marvel now, is you're not going to go in and watch everything and love everything to the 10th degree, because that's just the way it is. But anyways, go watch it. I enjoyed it. I'll watch it. I'll probably never watch it again, but to be fair, I don't think I've watched many of the Marvel TV shows twice. Going into another Marvel TV show, we had a Loki trailer drop today, which I will be completely honest, I was not a giant fan of the first Loki TV show. I was interested until we met all of the Lokis. And then I kind of was like, this is getting boring. Seems like I'm the only one, because everyone else says it was one of the best shows. Again, to each his own. Enjoy what you like. I'll enjoy what I like. You enjoy what you like. But the TV show, the season 2 trailer dropped today, and I was interested. I watched it. I was like, okay, we're kind of going where time is sort of rifting throughout like every 5 seconds, and Loki's going through time, and now we're going to be running into Kang in different eras of time and space. So I'm interested. I mean, Hiddleston and Wow are great together. Yeah, I'll watch it. I'll again, I've watched everything else, so I don't know why I wouldn't watch this. I will say something about the Secret Wars that I hope Loki does. I like having the half hour, 45-minute episodes. Once we get to these hour-long episodes, it gets a little long for me. And again, personal gripe, I'm not a big TV fan in the first place, so watching an hour episode is that's a struggle for me. I just can't. It's so much dialogue and so much backstory that I feel like you could rip out, and if you didn't know it existed, you wouldn't notice it. So hopefully they're half-hour episodes, but yeah, it looks good. Having what was it, the clock running through, crushing everybody as a big giant clock was pretty cool looking. So yeah, I'll watch it. I don't think they really showed. I can't think of anything. I'm trying to remember the trailer. I don't think there was anything there that jumped out at me going, oh, that's debuting, except for Kang being, in a different timeline or a different time period. So overall, I was happy with it. Another trailer that dropped today. We were just flowing through these today, and it's kind of flowing in a nice little groove here. Another trailer that dropped was Saw. Now, this was a trailer, and I don't mean this was a trailer in the way of it's another Saw movie. It looks like we're kind of going back to an era of the first Saw movie, which I appreciate. I love the first Saw movie. I love the first couple Saw movies. Once you get into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Jigsaw was 9, I stopped caring because it lost the essence of the original Saw. And the essence of the original Saw was, if you waste your life or you are a jerk, someone is going to take it away from you. That's a simple, easy to understand plot. And I'm going to spoil Saw for anybody who hasn't seen it in the past 20 years. You had Jigsaw, who found some people who screwed him up and hurt him, and now Jigsaw was seeking revenge on them. The first movie wasn't about the traps. There was a couple traps, but it wasn't the main thing. The main thing was the understanding that these two people who are locked in a room together need to figure out why they're there and how to get out. What's their commonality? That was a great, great movie. The second one was a little more crazy and a little more trap heavy. And then that sort of became their calling card of, well, what big trap can we do for the next one? And that's all it became. It became a gore fest, and it became, let's just kill people in crazy ways. But this new trailer is showing that it seems like Jigsaw still has his cancer, and he went in to get the tumor or whatever was causing the cancer removed. And it appears that those doctors that were working on him lied, and he still has cancer. Well, you mess with Jigsaw or you do something wrong, you're going to go and get stuck in a weird thing that you have to show that you really care about your life that much, including hurting yourself, which is really cool. And I really dig that thought, and I really dig that idea, especially now with how much Jigsaw has done through the previous movies, how much experience he has now. And yes, this does seem very trap heavy. I mean, the bloody poster is a guy that looks like he's got a trap where they're going to suck his eyeballs out, which I think is dope looking. And the gore looks like it's going to be on full effect, which I'm perfectly fine with a gore movie as long as it has a good plot. That is, and I've said this a million times, that is the biggest thing when it comes to me with horror. I love horror. As long as you have a decent story behind it, I'm great with it. I'm great with any horror. If you just want to do a bloodbath, I'm bored to tears and I'll turn the movie off. It's just the way I am when it comes to my horror. I need a little bit more to keep me engaged than just watching somebody get tortured. It's boring to me. It's really boring to me after a while. But yeah, I'm interested. I might even go see this in theaters because, yeah, that got me interested. So another good horror movie coming out. I'm excited. Let's do we do good news or do we do bad news? Let's do bad news first, and we can cushion it on the end with some more good news. I think anybody who's been online today saw that we lost a beloved child actor today, Paul Rubens. You know, I used to do a segment on here where we talked about people who passed away, and I stopped doing it because, you know, it just kind of felt, you know, sad and blah. But I wanted to point this out because I was a big Pee-wee's Playhouse fan growing up. I watched those videos, and I want to say I watched the videos specifically because my mom's boyfriend had several of them when they first got released on VHS, and I watched them so much. And I watched them probably, now that I think about it, when I was older than I shouldn't say should, but older than what the demographic probably was. But I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed his his sense of humor. I enjoyed the way the show was written. I enjoyed the colorful characters. I did not like the movie, which a lot of people I've seen swing the other way, and they love the movie but don't like the show. I like the show, but the movie just kind of bored me because it felt like he was a fish out of water, and that just, I don't know, that didn't really work for me. But a great actor. I know he did a Netflix special a few years ago, bringing Pee-wee back. I think it was a live stage performance of it. But yeah, he sadly passed away today or yesterday, 7 years old, been battling cancer for the past couple months, and he's just kept it private. And that sucks because, you know, we know if you grew up in the 90s, you're well aware of his being arrested and all that, which we won't get into because you can Google it and find it. But, you know, I enjoyed his work growing up. I really thought he was a cool character, even though it was wacky and over the top, probably for how old I was, but I did enjoy it. So, Mr. Rubens, thank you for an amazing career. Thank you for the memories. And you will live on. You always will. Let's talk about cosplay. Let's talk about cosplay quickly because I have finally decided to release my cosplay lineup for Fan Expo 2023. Wow, 2023. Wow, I'm getting old. You got 4 days. We've got a Thursday, we got a Friday, we got a Saturday, we got a Sunday. Let's start off with Thursday. Thursday, I'm wearing street clothes. I'm sorry, I'm wearing street clothes because I'm going to get there at 2:00 in the afternoon. I am not wearing a costume. I need to go shopping. I will not be in costume on Thursday. So if you see me running around in street clothes, still come say hi. I just don't expect a costume. Friday, I will be bringing the Bone Boy back. Bone to be Wild. Ghost Rider will be back in the flesh. Not really flesh. He will be back on Friday. I will be walking around in him, sweating my butt off probably. But yeah, Ghost Rider will definitely be back. Saturday, I will have Dash Rendar from the Star Wars franchise completed. I will be doing the masquerade that day. Hopefully, knock on wood, I get accepted. They should be sending me a thing in the next couple days telling me if I am or not. I don't see why I wouldn't, seeing as I've been in almost every masquerade for the past X number of years. But yeah, I will be doing that. And Sunday. So Sunday was the weird one. Sunday was going to be, before everything went wrong with the Spider-Man suit, it was going to be Spider-Man. However, based on what time of year it is, and based on, well, I say time of year, depending on showing what the date is, and the date being August 1st, and the con being in 3-4 weeks, and I still don't have a mask. It's supposed to be shipping. I'll believe it when I see it. Even if it was to arrive today, I would still need to make the hoodie. I would still need to make the belt, and I would still need to make the gauntlets, and I'd still need to make the ankle things. And I just have, other things I'd rather do. And I've been kind of working pretty hard on the other things, cosplay wise and channel and stuff like that. I just don't have the time to go through all that at the last minute. I hate doing cosplay at the last minute. So I'm going to scrap Spider-Man. Hopefully I get the mask at some point and I don't have to send the suit back or whatever, because that's going to be a frustration and a half. I will be rocking Green Lantern that day. I know the Geeks and Co folks will be doing a bunch of meetups through the weekend, and that Sunday will be DC Day. So I will be joining them for their DC meetup in my Lantern suit. So if you see me at the con in either Dash or Green Lantern or Ghost Rider, or even walking around in my street clothes, come say hi, come say hello, come say how are you doing? How's the con? And we can do a quick chat. And yeah, it's going to be a good weekend. I can't wait to be there. I will be there all weekend. And I think there was something else I was going to talk about, but I cannot come to me right now. Anyways, yeah, so it will be a good, it will be good. What happened to your suit? My suit was, my suit is, we're not going to talk about the suit. The suit was, so they sent me a suit. I ordered it back in April, and unfortunately it, one second. The suit was, I ordered in April. And I think I talked about this last episode or the episode before. Ordered the suit. It was the Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider suit with the detachable mask, and there was some production issues with the seller. There was some issues with shipping. I don't know, but their customer service has been terrible. I ended up getting the suit 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago, after waiting months for it, and it didn't have a mask. So it didn't get the mask. I messaged them about it. They said it'd be shipping out shortly, and I'm still waiting. So if I don't get a mask by Friday, I'm going to be messaging them and possibly asking for a refund, because I'm just beyond frustrated at this point, because I want to cosplay and I can't. So yeah, it's a whole problem, but whatever. Can't do anything about it. It's out of my control. I wanted it for Fan Expo. Actually, I wanted it for the the Spider-Verse premiere, but that didn't happen. Either way, I'll be rocking Green Lantern on Sunday. I'll be rocking Dash Render on Saturday. I'll be rocking Ghost Rider on Friday, and I'll be rocking my shorts on Thursday. So I will see you all at Fan Expo in August. I think it's time to do a little sponsor, and then we're going to jump into my top 10 comic book movies. All right. Sponsor, as always, you're well aware, is my beautiful, loving, amazing wife, until someone can give me some cash, and then they'll become a sponsor. But until then, it's still my wife, and it'll always be my wife, no matter who the sponsor is. Love my wife. She means the world to me. I wouldn't be doing this without her. I love you, hun. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you for supporting me. Love you. Let's talk about top 10 movies, folks. Top 10 comic book movies. So this is how it's going to work. I tried my darndest to get this stream to have a list somewhere. However, because I'm rocking a Mac and not a PC, Macs are notoriously a pain in the butt for cooperating with programs. So unfortunately, I cannot have a list up while I do this. So you're just going to have to follow along. And tomorrow I will post on a regular post, and I'll post to my stories the final list once we are done. Let's talk about how I rank this list. When it comes to my top 10 comic book movies, I have seen almost every comic book movie that you could think of. I'm a giant comic book fan. I'm a big movie fan. Those kind of work well together. There are a couple things that are going to play a factor in this. One, I have to have obviously loved the movie. That is obviously number one. Number two, replayability makes a big factor for me. It makes a big, big difference. because if I've seen a lot of these movies, a lot of comic movies once. If I watch them again and again and again, that is going to play a factor because that shows that I really love that movie. Another factor, there will only be one movie per franchise. So you will not see Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man. No. One movie per franchise because that would just throw the lift completely because I could say Guardians 1, 2, and 3 are my first, second, and third favorite. They're not, but that's what I mean. So I want to do a couple honorable mentions because picking 10 out of 100 movies is hard. So there are a couple that I love that I just didn't get on the list because of, again, replayability being a factor. Age, we'll say age on a couple of these because if they were closer to today, I feel like you can improve many things, including story, effects, etc. So, first honorable mention is a movie that a lot of people do not remember is a comic book movie, A History of Violence, with Viggo Mortensen and Ed Harris. Viggo Mortensen, Ed Harris, History of Violence. An amazing, amazing movie. Basically, the plot of the movie, if you've not seen it, this is from a mid-2000s. A man who has done a lot of terrible things in his life is settling down. You don't know what he's done. He's trying to settle down and not have that past come up. He's working in a diner, and that past comes up and bites him in the butt. It's almost a more grounded version of, say, a John Wick. And I love this movie based off tone. It's a very interesting movie because in the middle of the movie, Viggo Mortensen grabs his wife and just starts having uncontrollable, passionate sex on a staircase. And I went to see this with my dad, and it's like, you don't see everything, but you see from first to finish. And it was very awkward sitting next to my dad being like, that's happening. And my dad's sitting right next to me. So that always holds a little funny moment in my heart. But overall, a great movie. Viggo Mortensen is an amazing protagonist. Ed Harris is a dick when it comes to being a villain, but such a good villain. History of Violence, great movie. Go check it out if you haven't. Again, it is based off a graphic novel, so it counts as a comic book movie. Another honorable mention is The Punisher. The Punisher from the 2000s it's exactly what you wanted a Punisher movie to be. The way that they wrote this Punisher was such a sympathetic character. We've seen so many heroes face adversities when it comes to an Uncle Ben, or in the Superman or the Batman watching the parents get shot and the pearls flying in the air. The way that they wrote the Thomas Jane Punisher, you felt so bad for him because he was just doing his job as a police informant, undercover police informant. John Travolta as the villain is hilarious because it works so well, but it's so out of place. There was the second Punisher, the Warzone one, where you introduce the Jigsaw villain. I think that would have worked very well in the Thomas Jane world, but I think Thomas Jane, just the look, the feel of the movie, the way he acted, the fight scene with Kevin Nash as the Russian, it's a solid movie. It is still a great, solid movie that isn't over the top. It's a very grounded hero in a very grounded world that isn't over the top bombastic like Marvel is now. Very gritty, very good. Highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, I'm very surprised because it seems like everybody saw that movie when it came out and it was worth it. Lastly, I really enjoyed Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass was such a good movie. I was a big fan of the graphic novel when I was growing up. It was one of the few It was one of the few characters that was not my age, but we'll call him the Robin character, where you had the main character and having him be a younger, your age that you're reading character. Kick-Ass was one of those characters that I actually enjoyed, where I wasn't looking up to the character. I was looking at the character going, that could be me. Like there's nothing stopping me from being Kick-Ass. And I really enjoyed the brutalness of it. The having Nicolas Cage be in that movie as what the heck's his character, the father figure to Hit Girl. Very gritty, very real. Shot locally, I believe. I believe it's mostly shot in Hamilton and Toronto. So playing Name That Alleyway is always fun for me. But yeah, I really enjoyed Kick-Ass. Yeah, so those are my 3 honorable mentions. Alex in the chat said, I hope Scott Pilgrim's on the list. I love Scott Pilgrim. It is not on the list. Sorry. It is not on the list. And that is one that I've seen multiple times. That is, again, I'm going through so many great movies that I needed to trim some fat, and unfortunately that one got trimmed. It is right on the edge. You know what? I will throw that in as a last-minute honorable mention. Scott Pilgrim is a great movie. And I think because, and here's the thing, I think because I've played the Scott Pilgrim game more than I've read the books, I still sometimes forget that it is a comic book movie, but it does count. It is a great movie. I can't say anything bad about Scott Pilgrim. It's hard to say anything bad about Scott Pilgrim. Anything. Games, books, movies, great series, great. And it's set in Toronto, which is even better. So we will add that to the honorable mentions list. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Let's go with number 10. Sin City. Sin City is my number 10. That is a stylistic movie if you've ever seen one. The world of Frank Miller's Sin City in a comic book form is so, it's detailed without being detailed. Having a black and white world with little spritz of color here and there is such a cool concept that when I first heard they were going to bring that into a film, I thought, how are you going to pull that off? There's no way you're going to shoot that whole thing black and white with just little spritzes of color in. Not only did they do it, they did it almost shot for shot like the graphic novels, and it worked, which is stunning because there is not many comic books out there or graphic novels that if you did shot for shot, worked that well in a movie. And they did an incredible job. The narrating throughout the movie being the dialogue boxes, such a good call. Such a good call. Having all these stories come together and put it into one, connecting universe where they're all meeting and seeing each other at the bar, such a good concept. Even, yes, I know it was taken from the book, but having that be visually told in a movie is such a good idea. The cast was just out of this world. I can't even think of all. Jessica Biel and all the, or not Jessica Biel. Can't remember her name. Anyways, all the cast from top to bottom is a 10 out of 10. I can't think of a better cast across the board. There's not a bad actor in that movie. And I've seen that movie so many times, I could probably quote most of it. The biggest problem with that, though, is it set such a high bar. When A Dame to Kill came out, it didn't do as well, which sucked because I was so waiting to see the next book, and it just didn't do it, which bummed me out. But Sin City, the movie, is such a good movie, and having Frank Miller do a cameo in it makes it even better. Overall, that is my number 10, Sin City. Let's move on to number 9. We're going with a little Marvel. Number 9, we're hitting a Marvel Universe movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy was such a fun movie. I think everybody and their mom didn't have a clue who Guardians of the Galaxy was before that movie hit, which makes it even better. Even myself, as a comic book fan, knew who Guardians of the Galaxy was. And I remember walking into that theater going, so you're telling me the giant tree and raccoon movie is going to be really? Them? Come on. And it is probably one of the most loved Marvel movies. Again, cast was amazing. Nobody was expecting that to do well. The complicated, deep, the story being so simple, we're going to get a jewel. That's basically what it was. It's a MacGuffin movie. We're going to get a jewel. But having the nerds and the hardcore Marvel fans know what that means makes it a great movie on two levels. You're not having to dumb it down for the simple kids. You're not having to lose them because you're getting super crazy with the Marvel nerds. The whole thing works perfectly. And I have to stick with number one because of not knowing it was going to be a knockout. There is nothing wrong with 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are just as good. I would hold them as equals against number one, 110%. But going into that theater and knowing enough about the comics and knowing enough about the characters to have that bias and think this ain't going to work and being completely wrong. Great job, James Gunn. Great job to everybody in that cast and Marvel for taking a shot. And this is where what I said earlier about the Marvel franchises kind of bites me in the butt, because we're starting to get so deep into the Marvel lore that it starts to worry me that we're going to start hitting these characters that only the hardcore fans are going to care about. But on the flip side of that, Iron Man was not an A character when that movie came out. Guardians was not an A group when that movie came out. So maybe Marvel has a couple more of these in their back pocket that they can pull out and go, here's your new favorite lunchbox. Here's your kid's new favorite toy. Because, yeah, Guardians was a home run if I've ever seen it. And that's the thing. You now have a world of characters that, spoilers if you haven't seen Guardians 3, you can take one of those characters out of that group and pull it and throw it into its own movie, or pull a couple of those characters and make them in their own Guardians team. Because if you've read the books, there are 20 million different versions of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm excited to see where we go from it. But that is my number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 8, we're sticking with the MCU and we're doing Iron Man, the first official movie of the MCU. This is the moment where I went, okay, we've now stepped into a world where this is normal. This was one of the first moments where I remember watching a comic book movie and thinking they're taking this seriously, and not seriously like movies have done, and like movies have taken these seriously in the past, 100%. But this is something that took the source material, I feel, and made it okay to like it, and made it okay that everyone accepted it. Because we had the X-Men, we had Blade, we had Superman, we had Batman. Those were all, I feel, still nerd people. Batman 89 or Batman, all those Batmans were, I get that became a zeitgeist and that became a giant thing. But then it kind of went back underground, let's say. And you had the Daredevils, and you had Electras, and you had Blade and stuff like that, which I still felt like it wasn't cool to be that fan. But when Iron Man came out, that was different. Iron Man had Robert Downey Jr., which, if you know his backstory as a recovering alcoholic and someone who had everything and lost it, that's Tony Stark to a T. And that made a perfect character. And that he put everything into it, and he put all of his own feelings and battles into Tony Stark and took it so seriously, but still had that shiny Marvel comic book paint to it, literally on the Iron Man suit. It was a knockout movie. It was a 10 out of 10 movie. I can't say anything bad about it. I probably watched that movie 20 times. I'm so glad it exists, because without that, and without the key thing at the end being the end credit scene, we wouldn't have the MCU we have now. I think if you did Marvel or if you did Iron Man and you just stopped and you didn't show that end credit scene, I don't know if the MCU would exist. I feel like having Nick Fury come out and say, we're looking into a team, just made the fanboys want so much more. And I know that Marvel did have ideas of what they were going to do with Thor and Hulk and everything else, but I feel like if you didn't have that end credit scene, it wouldn't have worked as well as it did. And because of that, everybody, no matter, I shouldn't say everybody, sadly, some people don't realize it by now, no matter what the movie is now, you stay after the credits because you never know what might pop up on screen. And it's because of that movie. So I can't say anything else about Iron Man 1 that hasn't been said a billion times before. Amazing movie. We're at number 8. Now we're moving up to number 7, and we're jumping out of the MCU, and we're jumping into a very dark movie, a very R-rated movie, a very bloody movie, a movie that has sometimes been said that it is actually ripping off another movie, but I'm okay with that, and that's Dredd. I am a big Judge Dredd fan, and seeing the Sylvester Stallone movie back in the day, it wasn't Dredd, but seeing Carl Urban as Dredd, whoa, that was a movie that took that character and it ripped it right out of the comics and threw it right onto your screen. Having Carl Urban be ruthless as Judge Dredd, the blood from Judge Dredd, the plot, it's such a simple plot that, yes, if you've seen the movie The Raid, it's very similar, where there's a big apartment building and you're trying to get to the top. Yes, I understand that, but it still works. Thank you, Alex. Lena Headey as the villain, as Mama, is such a good villain. Even I cannot remember the actress's name, being Judge Anderson and being the psychic, and seeing her character develop throughout the movie and realizing she may not want to be in the company of Judge Dredd and be a judge with her or with him. Such a good movie. That is one of the very few movies that I own on Blu-ray, because it is such a good movie and is so good to see on a big screen that I'm glad I did see it on a big screen. And I have a big TV downstairs and I've watched it again. And actually my wife watched it and she thought it was fairly entertaining too, except for the blood. But yes, I'm a big fan of even the redesign. And that's another thing. When I first saw that they redesigned Judge Dredd for that movie, and he was more of a riot gear SWAT type look, I was worried that fans were going to rip that to shreds, because Dredd traditionally has his big shoulders and his big helmet, but he was more sleek and more toned down, and it worked. And I was worried that there was going to be some fan backlash, but thankfully there wasn't. And actually, I think that suit has become the norm, and the classic Judge Dredd has been not washed away, but isn't as popular as it once was. So that is number 7. We're moving up the list pretty quick here. Let's jump into number 6, and that is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie. I have cosplayed this character. I cosplayed it October for Halloween, and that is The Crow. The Crow is, oh my, I can't say enough good things about this movie. We did lose Brandon Lee because of it, which sucks. It sucks because he was an incredible actor, but I appreciate what they did with the movie, because there are parts of the movie that you can tell, if you know what happened, he is not seen in the movie, but side shots, back shots are done of him. And it adds to the movie. It works. The way that he is in the shadows, the way that he is just hidden from so many shots works so well. It's very Spawn-esque, where he's not seen for half the movie, and that's okay. I feel it actually helps the movie. The comic book is such a dark comic book, and I feel like they really brought that into the world of the movie, because you could really, and I think they've proven it with their sequels, you could easily mess that up. I personally am a fan of the sequels, City of Angels. The other ones are their own, but I love The Crow. I've seen it I watch it at least every year. You will never find that. I think that's one of the biggest problems with the movie, is that you have Brandon Lee as Eric Draven, and I think even without what happened, I feel like he became that character. And I feel like if you try to do anything else, like I know Momoa was written in to do a remake of it in the last couple of years, I just don't see it working, because Brandon is tied to that character so much. And like I said, even the sequel, City of Angels, where I cannot remember the actor's name, but he did a fine job with it. But you're just looking at it going, it's not Brandon. It's not Brandon. It's not Brandon. And by the way, it's one of the best sequels, best soundtracks out there. One of my favorite soundtracks. Very dark, very industrial, very Nine Inch Nails if you're into it. We're at the halfway point, folks. Just to keep up, if you jumped in late, so we've got Sin City at number 10, Guardians of the Galaxy at number 9. We've got Iron Man 1 at number 8. We've got Dread at number 7. And number 6, we've got The Crow. Got that? 5 more to go. Alex said in chat the TV show has not done well either. Yeah, the TV show was the TV show. Back in those days, the TV shows were never like Mortal Kombat had a TV show. It felt like everybody wanted to be Hercules and Xena. It's sort of shot that same way. Anyway, side note. Let's go into number 5. We're going to go into the MCU, but the future MCU, because he is getting a number 3 in next year after, and that is Deadpool. Number 5 is Deadpool 1. Deadpool 1. What can you say about Deadpool? I mean, Ryan Reynolds, he has got a special gift. Well, first, he's Canadian, so that helps. But Ryan Reynolds taking a character like Deadpool, which I think a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to screw up that character. I am a Deadpool fan. But I will also say I used to be a bigger Deadpool fan. And that's because I've read enough Deadpool comics where the writer has written jokes and tried to put Deadpool in them. That is very different from writing Deadpool and putting jokes around him. There's a big, big difference. And Deadpool the movie is a movie about Deadpool that has jokes around him. Ryan Reynolds knocks it out of the park. I mean, Ryan Reynolds, you knew it was going to be a good movie because we saw a preview of how he was going to play that character in Wolverine Origins. And even just from the few seconds that he had a voice, Wolverine Origins, why'd you close his mouth at the end, you idiots? We saw it was going to work. We saw he had the sarcasm. We saw he had the quips, which just made it even better. It was a good origin story too, which, again, you could write that story crappy. You could write that story as if the origin doesn't care. It's all about the jokes. but you wrote him as a sympathetic character. You wrote him to make sure that people felt for this person who was going through a life-altering cancer treatment. But he's kind of a funny dick about it, which just makes it even funnier. And you knew once you saw Deadpool 1, you knew it was going to get another movie. And the in-jokes were amazing, which again, this is the one thing that I think a lot of these comic movies that I mentioned need to follow and do follow. You need to be able to write a movie that the casual audience is going to understand and enjoy, and the hardcore fans are going to enjoy. That's why one of the reasons why Deadpool works. You've got a story that everyone can follow, but you've also got so many in-jokes where it comes to the Xavier Mansion and not being able to see anybody because we don't have the budget for it. That's hilarious. And even finding more details into the story, like learning that, if you don't know, the end fight scene where Deadpool gets all of his weapons together and he's going to go fight and he forgets them in the cab. There's a reason for that, and that is because they couldn't afford the budget for it. They either had to put the budget into that or they had to put the budget into marketing. So they put the budget into the marketing and took out that scene and made it a nice little joke where you forgot it. That's how you do something like that. So good for Deadpool. It was a great movie. I can't wait to see number 3. And I love number 2 too, because you had Cable in there, which makes it even funnier because Cable's such a good straight man for Deadpool. That is our number 5. Let's jump into number 4, and we will get these last few done. Number 4, you all should remember this as a comic book because it's an even better comic book than the movie, but the movie is amazing. That is The Mask with Jim Carrey. The Mask is such a good movie. It is such a good movie for completely different reasons than what it should be, because if you've read the Mask comic is such a dark book. It's such a gritty, bloody book. But then you have Jim Carrey take this version of The Mask and do a slapstick comedy with it, and it's amazing. And you don't even remember that comic book existed. That is one of the movies that changes the entire idea of it, and it works. It's hard to do that. The cast in that, Jim Carrey, Cameron Diaz, like Richard Jeni as the best friend. They all are great actors. They're all great characters. And again, it's a great story with great slapstick, great animation, by the way. Having really good CG back in the 90s that you can't, even now, you don't really look at and go, no. It's actually really good, and the story is good. Yes, look, Ma, I'm roadkill. Really good, funny lines, and I think a lot of people still remember the movie, but again, they don't remember it's a comic book movie because it's such a departure from the source material. Yeah, like one of Jim Carrey's best roles, and I don't think it gets the credit it deserves because I think a lot of people remember it just as a good movie. And I think it just kind of gets lost with, the Liar Liars and all these the Truman Show and stuff like that. So great job. We're into the top 3. We're into the top 3 comic movies. Has your favorite come up yet? Has your favorite come up on the list? Am I not going to say it? Am I going to say it? Is your number 1 my number 1? Let's find out. Number 3, I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to break a rule here, folks. Number 3, it's a tie. I'm sorry. It's the same. The reason I'm doing this is because they're the same reasons for both. And I couldn't pick one over the other because they're two points on a compass that are the exact same. And that is the Avengers and Endgame. Those are 2 bookmarks that just live in infamy when it comes to comic book movies for me. I remember seeing Avengers for the first time in theaters. And I remember sitting in the theater looking up and seeing that 360 shot of Cap, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye. And that was the first moment where if I didn't, I came very close to shedding a tear because that was the first moment I saw a splash page. And for those who don't know what a splash page is, that's where in a comic book you have 2 pages that you're looking at, and it's one big picture. That was the first moment when I saw a splash page on a movie screen, and I loved it. And I knew based on the reception and the roar of the crowd, we were far from done when it came to Marvel movies. And I'm so glad to hear it. And I was so glad to see it in theaters. It was, even coming home and listening to Soundgarden's the theme song from that movie, it still brings me chills hearing that song, because it puts me in that moment of, I was 20s at that point, but I felt like a kid. And that is what most of these movies should be doing when it comes to comic book fans, is bringing them back to that youth, bringing you back to that childhood moment where you were reading a comic. And that movie does it for me. It so does it for me. But for the exact same reasons, I cannot not put Endgame on this list, because that was the end of that saga, and it did everything right. I cannot pick a fault in that movie. I cannot watch that last act of that movie without crying. Hands down, still can't do it. I've watched it probably 10 times in my life. Still can't do it. I cry every single time. I cry at the on your left moment when everyone shows up and Falcon says it. I cry when Tony passes. Spoilers. I cry when Cap hands over the shield. I cry when he's dancing with Peggy at the end. And at the theater, I was bawling at the end. You can ask anybody who was with me. I was ugly crying. I was so happy at the end of that movie. It was a perfect ending to that. And as I said earlier, I don't remember if I said it here, if I said it on the Instagram Live, I feel like that's one of the biggest problems that Marvel's facing right now, is we had such emotion in that movie and a lot of those early movies that it's hard for them to try and grab that and pull it back into the new movies. Hopefully they will, but yeah, the chemistry with all the characters, the writing of all the characters, the growth of all the characters, even in that first movie, that first Avengers movie from their solo movies, was great. And then across the universe going into Endgame, again, you can't say anything bad about that movie. It was an amazing movie. That's my number 3. Number 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first one. This is my childhood movie. I cannot put this without putting this in my top 3. The TMNT movie from the 90s, which was based on a comic. What can you say about that movie? I mean, I've gushed about it on this channel 100 times probably. That movie I've watched at least once a year, because it is so true to the characters. It's so true to the characters, so true to the world, so true to what the fans wanted, but also taking a risk, because they also could have grabbed from the TV show, and they didn't. They grabbed from the original source material and made a whole bunch of little kids who did not see that coming into big fans when they walked out of that theater, because that was a kids movie that treated them like adults. And as a kid watching that, you felt like you could pull out any one of those weapons and you could be right next to them. And I feel like that movie imprinted on me when I was a kid, and even parts like showing the vulnerability of them. Like in the TV shows and the comics, the younger comics, not the adult comics, you never saw them really in trouble. There was a bunch of quips and funny bright colors and end of the episode. You saw Raph get the crap kicked out of him. You saw the rest of the turtles grieve because they thought Splinter was dead. And you saw them cry. that's not something any parent who saw the cartoon thought that they would be getting when they walked into the theater. And there are definitely, this is, I don't want to say this generation's doesn't have it the same, because this generation's amazing, these kids. But, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I am 35. But I do believe that you can show a more adult movie to a kid. And if it's got things in it that they can gravitate to, like the Ninja Turtles, obviously, I feel like they can understand it, and I feel like it'll help them. And I feel like it may become one of their best. Hey, Noah, we were talking about TMNT from the 90s. That's what we were talking about. It is definitely one of my favorite movies. The soundtrack is also amazing. Soundtrack plays a big thing in my life because I'm such an audio guy. But yeah, showing the character development, showing all of the darkness of the graphic novel comic books when you weren't expecting it. That's why it's my number 2. We're about to do number 1. Let's work our way back up the list so anybody hopping in can we can go through what they might have missed. Honorable mentions: A History of Violence. That was a comic book. It's a graphic novel. The Punisher, the Thomas Jane movie, and Kick-Ass. And last but not least, thanks to our buddy Alex in chat, Scott Pilgrim. Those are my honorable mentions. Let's run through the list quickly, and then we'll hit our number 1. Number 10, Sin City. Number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Number 8, Iron Man 1. Number 7, Dread. Number 6, The Crow. Number 5, Deadpool. Number 4, The Mask. Number 3, a tie between Avengers and Endgame. Number 2, TMNT. And number 1, Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse, 100%. It was the first one I wrote down because I knew it was my number 1 without even having to think about it. So I loved Into the Spider-Verse for multiple reasons. It was a movie that I had seen so many versions of Spider-Man, from the animated versions growing up to the real life Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and blah, 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 blah. This movie got Spider-Man. And it got Spider-Man in a way that I don't think any of those other properties ever did. Trying to put it into words. The Stan Lee line of "it'll always fit" the Spider-Man suit really hit me, because that is the basis of Spider-Man. That was how Stan wrote it. He wrote that character with a mask and completely covered because it could be anybody. And I think if you went to a kid, a teen, even a young adult, or even an older adult, and you said, we're going to do a Spider-Man animated movie, and the lead character is not going to be Peter Parker, it's going to be Miles Morales, I think everybody would have flipped the table. Because Peter's Spider-Man. Peter's always been Spider-Man. Miles is good, but it's Peter. We're doing the first one animated? Peter. No. Miles was a story you needed to show, especially in that format, because you knew kids would be going to see that. Showing his development, showing his struggles from a different point of view than what Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, I should say, had to deal with. Showing what it was like as a kid nowadays to go through high school and being, having those extra responsibilities of being Spider-Man. The moment where Peter from his universe is going to pass away, and he said, you can hear the fear in his voice. Don't take off the mask. They'll find you. They'll find the people you love. That's a gut-wrenching moment where you realize, he knows what's happened and he's dealt with it for so long. He he doesn't want this kid to have to go through it. So that there's so many good things. The anime, like, let's not even get started with the animation. Like, the animation is groundbreakingly good. Groundbreakingly good to the point where, yes, we can totally agree. TMNT, the next mutation that's coming out on Thursday, is influenced by it. 100%. There's no way to not see that. But, you know, having a story that introduces so many different variations of it, and they all work. Every one of the variants work. Every one of the moments hits. The bigness, the scale of it. And if that was it, it'd be a masterpiece. But to know that they did it again and across the Spider-Verse, and it knocked it out of the park again, man, like, and knowing, I don't know if that was the last, I don't think that was the last time we saw Stan, but I remember that was the first one we saw after Stan's passing. And I don't remember if he did get to see it or not, but having that rest in peace Stan at the end, that hit home. And I will admit I teared up at the end of that because we knew that was a moment that, you know, he's gone. But it was completely unexpected. It was an incredible, incredible movie. I mean, there's a reason why when I go see a movie at Landmark Cinemas and they show that, you know, welcome to the movies little thing, and Miles does that kick off the glass and does the backflip when it go, and it's perfect because it goes quiet, and I always whisper, "What's up, danger?" Because that song, that movie, it's a 10 out of 10. It's amazing. It had to be my number one, 100%. Let's quickly go through the chat because I got a couple people in here with a couple opinions on stuff that should have been here. What do we got here? We've got Kick-Ass was an honorable mention from No. Yes, Kick-Ass was an honorable mention. Again, so for those who jumped in late, I'm going with replayability. We're going with nostalgia for me because I grew up watching these movies since I was a little kid. And moments that really captured my movie-going experience, you know, whatever you want to call it. Yes, Kick-Ass was an honorable mention. I love Kick-Ass. There's nothing wrong with Kick-Ass at all. It's just, it's not one of my top 10s. Watchmen is nowhere. So I was not at the right age to watch Watchmen. Watchmen was a good movie. I had nothing against it. It's just too dialogue heavy for me. I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters, and I remember I was bored watching it. And I'd read the graphic novel before I went to see it. But yeah, Watchmen's not really for me. Nothing against the movie. You enjoy what you like. It's just not for me. Let's see. No, I do not cry in movies, but that made movie. Yeah. It. I was close, and no Matrix. No Matrix. The Matrix, I like the Matrix. I like the first one. The sequels were. But yeah, I enjoy the Matrix. It's not my top 10 though. The Matrix was the first movie I ever had on DVD. That was my first DVD, was The Matrix. No, let me take that back. It was the first movie I rented on DVD. I had a PS2 and I wanted to rent a DVD for the first time, and the first thing I rented was The Matrix. Alex, there was no sequels. Yeah, there wasn't. Yeesh. But yeah, that's my top 10, folks. So we're going from Sin City, Guardians, Iron Man, Dread, Crow, Deadpool, Matrix, Endgame, and Avengers together, TMNT, and Into the Spider-Verse. That is my top 10 comic book movies. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, we're going to make some people mad next week, because guess what? Next week, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do my top 10 worst comic book movies. And this is going to piss some people off, because there is one on here that I know everyone loves and I can't stand. I'm going to let you guys think about that for the week. But next week, We're going to go through my worst. I'm not saying they're the worst overall. I'm saying I don't enjoy them. Bet there will be a lot of DC. You know what? I will give you, seeing as you're all here, I will give you a quick hint. 300 better not. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So we got, you said DC. Let me see how many DCs. So I will tell you there's 2 DCs. And I will tell you that there's more Marvel than DC. Cool? Cool. That's for next week. There's more Marvel than DC. I still can't believe I wrote it that way, but it's true. So yeah, next week, worst comic book movies, in my opinion. In my opinion. Okay? Hope you guys had fun. I will pop the list. I will try and figure out if I can get the list to come up on here. As I said earlier, I'm with a Mac, so having Mac work with programs is a pain in the butt, so I might not be able to. I will type this up. I will put it up as a post tomorrow, so in case you guys want to review it. This was fun. I can't wait till next week. This is going to make so many people mad. I might lose followers. Anyways, I'll see you guys next week for Monday Night Nerd. Have yourselves a good week. I'll talk to you later. Love ya. See ya. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.